Okay, hello everybody. Let me just turn the lights on. Oh, wavy patterns. Maybe we'll have the lights off. Okay. I've just thought I'd share with you what I've been doing for the last few days, week or so. I've been very ill recently. I've had the norovirus, which is like sickness and diarrhea and fever and shaking and headaches and it's been horrible. Anyway, so I've been pretty much quarantined in my house for the last few days. My daughter Evelyn's had it as well. And so I've been stuck in the house all weekend. I've not gone to work today because I was still being sick last night. So anyway, I thought I'd use the time productively to start to develop my Swiss cheesing skills for pistons, because it's something that I know can help with the operation of your gun. Certainly making the piston lighter means that there's less weight to move around in the gun. You've got less reciprocating mass, so when the sector gear comes back round to collect the piston and start it travelling backwards, if the piston is lighter, then there's less mass that it needs to start moving, so there's less slowdown in the gearbox. So it can generally make your gun go faster, because it will cycle faster because the gearbox won't slow down as much between shots. And also, when it changes direction and shoots forward again, if your piston is lighter, there's less mass for the spring to push forwards. So it's going to go forwards a little bit quicker. Certainly helps with avoiding pre-engagement if the piston's returned back forwards all the way fully. So I just thought I'd show you a few of the examples that I've had. As you can see here, I've been actually working out ideal sizes for the holes and things. So I just pulled out a load of old pistons from my dead Boneyard spares box, weighed them all, and just started experimenting with different patterns. So I believe this first one, let's check the camera, it's still working. Yep. So this first one is the original piston from my Scar H, which, as you can see, is fully dead, fully trenched the gears. So this one I kind of gave up pretty quickly, because I just randomly started drilling small holes along the rails and then immediately realised they were all over the place and nowhere near big enough, and so that one was screwed up. So there wasn't much point with that one. So that was 9.6 grams to start with, and after a few holes drilled it was at 9.29, so I only reduced the weight by 0.31 of a gram. So I realised pretty early on there that you really need to think about what you're going to be doing before you actually do it. You can't just start drilling away. I should point out that I have Swiss cheesed a couple of pistons before in Chad's M4 and Josh's M4. No, not Josh's M4, Chad's M4 and my MP5, which happens to be in bits right next to me. That's the gearbox from the MP5. That's need some work doing before I sell it. So my next attempt was this black piston, which was from my MP5 originally, I believe. So I tried to remember what I did last time with the Swiss cheesing. As you can see, this did not work very well. This is exactly why I was practicing. So this was 12.37 grams to start with and 9.61 grams after, a reduction of 22.31%. So my plan was to do 4 big 10mm holes along the top with smaller holes of 4 or 5mm and then more small holes along the bottom rails. So I tried a few different methods on this one. So this was lots of tiny holes, and on this side lots of larger holes. Now the problem I was having was the drill bit on the larger drill bits was just biting the plastic. It would just, like, you'd go to drill through it, and because the plastic was so soft, and my nice shiny drill bits, which are brand new, were very sharp. They just go through it like a knife through butter, bite into the plastic and just rip chunks out. So I found that you could get much smoother hole drilling if you used smaller holes, but using smaller holes reduces less weight. So you can see this is a 6mm, I believe these are 4mm, I think, maybe even 3mm. What's that one? That is a 4. So these are smaller than 4mm holes, and you see that they don't go from the teeth to the rail, whereas the 6mm fits almost perfectly from the tooth to the rail. So I did 6mm along this side, and as expected, a few of them grabbed it, ripped chunks out and stuff. No matter how lightly I pressed with the drill bit, as soon as it bites the plastic, it was ripping chunks out. And an even more devastating effect after I did the 4 10mm holes. I tried doing 5mm holes along next to them, and it just like one of them just caught it and just ripped massive chunks out on 2 of the teeth. So that was pretty much a write-off. So I've started marking up and measuring the positions of where the holes need to go. And I realised that to get consistent spacing between the holes, I wanted ideally 2 or 3mm between each hole to maintain structural integrity. And the problem I was having with the 10mm holes was that if I drilled 5mm below them, they were getting too close to the 10mm, so it was breaching the kind of minimum distance between them, and they'd just form into one giant hole and rip chunks off. So I was really struggling to figure out how I could avoid this destructive effect. So that one lost quite a lot of weight. Well, only 2.76 grams, but when the whole thing only weighs 12 grams, that's quite a chunk, you know, that's 22%. So the one after that was the original piston from my Stoner. This was slightly more successful. So I was being a bit more careful, a bit more precise with the drilling, but as you can see, we still had the problem with the giant 10mm holes just ripping chunks between the smaller ones next to them. I realised that with these 10mm ones, you could make them drill a hell of a lot smoother if you go up in increments. So I was already piloting the holes with the Dremel, drilling a 2mm hole through first, then opening up to a 4mm, then a 6mm, and then finally the 10mm. So that gave me nice smooth holes by drilling incrementally larger because there was less bite as it cut into the plastic. So we got these nice 5mm holes along the rails and 6mm holes along the lower rails. But as you can see, obviously I didn't increment the 6mm ones slowly enough. I think I piloted it, then a 2mm, and then jumped straight to the 6, and as you can see it happened here. It just bit the 6mm at one point and just ripped the chunks out. So that was very frustrating because I couldn't really figure out how to do it any better. So I realised that with 4 10mm you can fit 4 along the top, but they were so wide that it was reaching the edges of the 5mm holes. So I realised that if instead of using 10s I used 8s, I could fit 5 8mm holes along the top, and it'd keep them further away from the 5mm holes here. So there'd be less of this breaching between the holes where it just rips chunks out and damages the structural integrity of the piston. So this is a real learning curve for me, this one. So that one was 17.14 grams to start with and 14.5 after. So a reduction of 15.4%. So not as good as with the black MB5 piston, though that was a bit of a disaster unto itself. So here's the final iteration. I think I've pretty much perfected it now. I'm ready to try it on the actual real piston I intend to use in my next build. This is the whole reason for practicing this. Could you imagine how gutted I would have been if I got this nice, like 25 quid ultimate red piston and it did that the first time I tried to Swiss cheese some holes into it, because these red pistons are really heavy. They're 19.38 grams to start with. largely because of all the metal teeth on the rack, but they're very thick, heavy polycarbonate. So anyway, this was my final version, and I've perfected this one now. This is the same pattern that I'm going to use on this red version. So this was just a normal white piston, which I assume was taken out of a gun. It's not actually knackered, and it's already had the first tooth removed and the second tooth shaved down a bit. So this could actually go back into a gun, especially now that I've Swiss cheesed it. This would be a very nice piston to have in one of the cheaper builds that I do. So we did 5 8mm holes along the top with 7 5mm holes either side, 7 6mm holes along the lower rails, and then I did a few 2mm infill holes between the 8mm just to drill out some of the larger pieces of remaining plastic that were there, and it worked beautifully. I did have to increment the drills quite a lot. I like to go all the way up to the 8mm holes without it biting the plastic. I had to use, let me just count, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 drill bits. So I increased those holes usually by 0.5 of a millimetre at a time so that it didn't rip it to pieces. So it took 8 incremental steps to drill each one of those holes. So 2mm, 4mm, 5, 5.5, 6, 6.5, 7, and finally 8 to drill those larger holes. And the same sort of practice applies for the 5mm ones. It was 2, 4, and then 5. And then for the 6mm, 2, 4, 5, 6, I believe. Just incrementally making the holes larger to avoid it ripping up the plastic. And it seems to work perfectly well. And this one has now been, all the holes have been filed out with my trusty needle files. It's been sanded on the inside, so it's nice and smooth on the inside, and then I've used wet and dry paper, 250 grit followed by 800 grit on the outside to make it nice and smooth. So that's pretty much my refined Swiss cheesing pattern. I could have gone more drastic. Everyone's seen the crazy Swiss cheesed ones where they just take out whole sections of the piston, but I don't believe that would hold up for the structural integrity that I want. So we've still got 3mm walls between the 6mm, 3mm walls between the 5mm, 3mm walls. Actually, I think they're 4mm. Let's have a look. Yeah, about 4mm. 4mm walls between the 8mm holes. So there's still plenty of wall space between the majority of the holes. It's a bit thin in some of these locations where the 8mm are right next to the 5mm, but I'm not too worried about them. There's enough there. There's enough meat there to hold the piston together. I mean, it is still really strong, and I'm very happy with it. It looks cool as fuck, as you can see. So this one was originally 13.28 grams, and after I'd finished with it, it is 10.13 grams. I was hoping to get it under 10 grams, but that's almost a 25% reduction in weight. So I've almost reduced the weight of the piston by a quarter through this Swiss cheesing method, which I'm very happy with. I'd certainly be more than happy with that on this ASG Red, because if I remove some of the metal teeth from that piston rack, it's going to lighten the piston even further. And if I can get 5 grams off of it through Swiss cheesing, you know, a 25% reduction, that would be just great. I mean, by removing a couple of teeth from the rack, that'll probably take a couple of grams off as well. So, you know, a piston that at the moment is almost 20 grams in weight, I could get that down to maybe, I don't know, 12, 13 grams, which I'd be a hell of a lot more happy with, seeing as that piston is going in a high-speed build. So yeah, I've spent the last few days evolving through various progressions of Swiss cheesing methods to perfect the design, basically. So this is, I now have all this noted down in my notebook, the sizes and spaces that I used, and I've perfected the method of doing it. So I'm very happy to apply that method of Swiss cheesing to any of my future builds that I go through, because it is just a good tweak to do in your gearbox. It reduces stress, increases speed, increases power, just makes everything run a little bit better. Okay, just thought I'd share that with you.